Our field of physics does not have a foundation. This is understood and fair enough. What we haven't yet worked out, we haven't yet worked out. No foul. Our field of physics does what it can with what it has gained so far to work with, and who can do more than that ever? It is widely accepted that identifying the foundation may well be impossible. There seems to be good reason to believe, via theories such as Gödel's incompleteness theorem and Tarski's undefinability theorem, that our mathematics and our logic unavoidably break down before they reach what could be seen as the foundation. We do the best we can with what we've got, and there's no shame in using the best hacks we can come up with in the face of that. The technological feats the field of physics has facilitated for us are astonishing, but it's no good making the case that foundational understanding cannot be achieved by invoking theorems that have no foundation of their own. Really, just think about that. Just because we have not got it right yet does not necessarily mean that we can never get it right. All we can say is that if we continue employing approaches that specifically prove themselves to be incompatible with any foundation at all, then we will continue to prove ourselves right, that we can't find our foundation. A person who does not know the truth, the simplest truth, is a liar by default when they tell themselves or anybody else that they understand something complex. And for the course of human history, we have not known the simplest truth. And for the simple want of knowing the simple truth of the matter, our education systems all around the world teach lies and then offer qualifications in them. They are schools of lies, plain and simple, to the point where our professors of mathematics do not know what a number is, and our professors of theoretical physics do not know what the word physical means. This is how it is. The actually useful and coherent meaning of number is that a number states the objective or absolute quantity of a subjective or relative quality. See my video lecture series, The Proof Trilogy, for more detail on this. Our current field of mathematics sees number as the very opposite of this. A number is seen by our mathematicians as a statement or measurement of a quantity that is subjective, subject to an objective quality. They got it precisely wrong, precisely back to front, and they still have it precisely wrong today. Having something back to front in this way means that cause is identified as effect, and effect is identified as cause. That is how catastrophic this error is. Of course, it is impossible to find the foundation, the truth of reality, from this situation of the direct inversion of truth. The actually useful and coherent meaning of the word physical is that which changes over space and time as relative expression of absolute truth. And this includes more than just mass and energy. Our current field of physics does not have a coherent definition of the word physical at all. It's important to understand that just because one hasn't identified one's foundation doesn't mean you can't make a mistake at the foundational level, such as numbers are subjective or physical matter is the only thing that's real. And if you do make the foundational mistake of believing the inversion of the actual foundational truth, then it will be impossible for you to reverse engineer your way back from the conclusions you have made to the actual foundational truth, because your conclusions were never emergent from the foundational truth in the first place. When we look to identify our foundation, we are doing what physics seeks to do in general, which is identify cause and effect, all the way down, or in 3 dimensions, all the way inwards to the primary cause. The concept of emergence is key here, because emergence identifies what is cause and what is effect relative to each other. That which is emergent is effect, and that which it is emergent from is the cause of that effect. The quandary that our field of physics has failed to identify and address for itself with any degree of coherency so far is that it makes 0 sense to suggest that the underlying cause of physical phenomena is itself a physical phenomenon. This idea is a closed loop, a self-defeating paradox, the kind that breaks any theory that contains it. And yet, the clear and obvious answer to this problem, that physical phenomena must, therefore, have a non-physical cause, is not considered, never suggested, never researched, as far as I'm aware. Why might this be? Firstly, perhaps it may simply be that I am the first person to ever identify that paradox. I'm not well read enough to know if this is true, but it seems a possibility. I have never personally heard anybody else raising it before. Secondly, if that paradox has been quietly identified somewhere, perhaps it is simply the case that nobody has yet been able to identify any non-physical phenomena that could be studied as a potential cause of the physical. After all, how is one supposed to verify the existence of and then study something that cannot be seen, touched, sensed with any of the physical senses? That would clearly be impossible, would it not? Well, no, it's not impossible. We can measure space using physical tools, even though it cannot be sensed with the physical senses. The physical senses only sense that which occupies space, not the space itself. We can also measure time using physical tools, even though time itself is not a tangible physical object. There is another non-physical phenomenon that we can be sure exists, even though we do not have a single dedicated physical tool for measuring it, and this is objective truth. Now, correct mathematics is objectively true, but as we have already discussed, our modern mathematicians see mathematics as being subjective, subject to, emergent from the presence of physical phenomena, rather than physical phenomena being subject to, emergent from, unchanging, non-physical, objective truth. And this is the mistake our professors and professionals are either unable or unwilling to identify, address, and resolve. Our mathematicians do not recognize the objectivity of mathematical truths, and this is a shame because, as far as I am aware, mathematical truths are the only objective phenomenon in all existence. The only reason mathematical truths can be objectively true is because they are non-physical. As soon as a phenomenon can be identified as physical, it naturally follows that it must change over space and time, and its intrinsic qualities can only be measured relatively. If we take an inventory of existence, only to find that all of it consists of two broad categories of phenomena: that which does not ever change, because it is non-physical, and that which can only change, because it is physical. And we recognize that that which does not ever change is not a changing physical phenomenon in itself, but rather objective truth that applies to all physical phenomena, while all that does change, all that is change, can only change in accordance with that which does not ever change. Then you recognize that all that does change is physical phenomena, and it can only be emergent from the non-physical objective truths that it absolutely must remain in agreement with. In other words, it makes zero sense to say that that which never ever changes is emergent from that which is always changing and only ever changing in accordance with that which never changes. In other words, the physical is and could only ever have been emergent from the non-physical. The physical is emergent from the non-physical, and this unavoidable truth directly contradicts our current understanding of mathematics, which steadfastly asserts that maths is emergent from physicality, and it directly contradicts our current understanding of physics, which does not recognize anything at all that is non-physical. We even had to turn space and time into a single physical phenomenon. So dedicated are we to recognizing physical things and physical things alone as real. Our mathematics failing to identify what the word number means, and our physics failing to identify what the word physical means, is the root cause of their inability to identify their own shared foundation, which means that we cannot identify what our own existential foundation is while we subscribe to these models. Now, I haven't read Gödel's incompleteness theorem and Tarski's undefinability theorem. I have only read about them. But it occurs to me that a theory that claims to prove that any system that can implement the natural counting numbers cannot be both consistent and complete cannot itself be both consistent and complete. Not if it has implemented natural numbers. While a theory that claims you cannot define truth except as an indefensible assumption is effectively showing itself to be an indefensible assumption. But as I say, I haven't read them. One thing that Gödel's theory does agree with me on is that not every truth is provable. But the very simplest truth is understandable. And understanding it is actually enough. The reason for this is because it is the simplest truth that all more complex truths are emergent from and reduced down to. The very simplest truth is the truth that is literally always in effect, while complex truths are only sometimes in effect. The simplest truth is the most ubiquitous truth. It is the truth that all complex truths are complex expressions of, which makes it the most powerful truth. If you know the foundational truth, you know how everything is working at the foundational level. The foundational truth is this: there is absolute truth and its relative expression. That is what there is, and that is all there is. That is it. That is everything. That is the statement of what constitutes that which is real. There is nothing that is not it. Truth is a living organism because it has no choice but to remain true. Its own iteration, its own expression is its ongoing proving and reproving, balancing and rebalancing of itself relative to itself. Truth is conscious of itself because truth remaining true relative to itself is mechanistically synonymous with truth being conscious of itself. It is as it is because it is as it can only be. And so, we are truth in iteration. What does this mean at the human existential level? Objective truth, absolute truth, which is absolute because it just cannot not be true, cannot be absolute truth without its own proof, without its own perpetual proving. If the proof of the truth, the expression of truth, were not present, then truth itself would not be present and correct. And the truth has zero choice but to be present and correct in all locations, at all times, at all scales, in all ways. Absolute truth is unchanging. The proving of absolute truth, the expression of absolute truth, is change. It is the eternal and perpetual rebalancing of this moment of the proving of truth, the expression of truth, with the previous iteration and the next. This is why you and I and us and everything are truth in iteration. Because truth in iteration is all there is, all there can be, and therefore we are it. Is our culture of lies, our worldwide human culture, truly so far away from the center of truth now, the baseline of truth, that we must find ourselves unable to recognize and accept it as the gift of all gifts that it is, simply because we have just grown so used to and comfortable with lies. Have we really become so afraid of learning something new that we now can't bear to know what the word number means or what physical means?